It's been 5 years since the Jubilee of Mercy. It's worth remembering because it continues to be an iconic part of Pope Francis's pontificate. For example, the Pope chose to inaugurate it in one of the places with the most suffering in the world, the Central African Republic. The Mass was attended by some 2,500 people, among them the Imam of the city's main mosque.
Bangui diviene la capitale spirituale della preghiera per la misericordia del Padre.
A week later, on December 8th, the solemn opening took place in St. Peter's Basilica. There, the Pope explained the meaning of this Jubilee.
Entrare per quella porta significa scoprire la profondità della misericordia del Padre che tutti accoglie e ad ognuno va incontro personalmente.
It was perhaps the only Jubilee in history to be inaugurated by two pontiffs, Pope Francis and Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. So began a continuous flow of pilgrims making the trip to walk through that door while reflecting on God's mercy. The pilgrimages continued nearly 12 months later. There were holy doors in churches in cities around the world. They weren't just in churches, however. For example, the Pope inaugurated this one at a homeless shelter in Rome.
Questa porta, che è la porta della carità, la porta dove sono assistiti tanti scartati, ci faccia capire che anche sarebbe bello che ognuno di noi, ognuno dei romani, ognuno di tutti i romani si sentisse scartato e sentisse il bisogno dell'aiuto di Dio.
Throughout the Jubilee, he often made surprise visits to different places in Rome. He called them gestures of mercy. In January, he visited this residence home for the elderly.
Molto contento.
E noi siamo felicissimi di accoglierla.
Come sta, signora?
Molto bene.
Forza e coraggio.
On that same visit, he stopped at a home to greet 6 people in a vegetative state and their families. In February, one of the most attended events of the Jubilee took place. Thousands of people went out to the streets of Rome to welcome the remains of 2 famous saints who dedicated much of their time to hearing people's confessions. They were Saint Leopold de Mandic and Padre Pio. The relics were on display in St. Peter's Basilica for several days. The Pope also went to pray before them. Mercy has many faces. That's why in May, he spent a few hours at Il Chico, a center for people with mental disabilities run by the Community of the Ark. One of the big events of the Jubilee took place in June. It was this gathering with priests from all over the world. The Pope invited them to this spiritual retreat he himself led.
Il nostro popolo perdona molti difetti ai preti, salvo quello di essere attaccati al denaro. Il popolo non lo perdona. E non è tanto per la ricchezza in sé, ma perché il denaro ci fa perdere la ricchezza della misericordia.
In July, Pope Francis met with hundreds of thousands of young people in Krakow, John Paul II's city. There he walked through the holy door opened for the occasion. In an enthusiastic speech, he invited them not to conform to a mediocre life.
Cari giovani, non siamo venuti al mondo per vegetare. per passarcela comodamente, per fare della vita un divano che ci addormenti. Al contrario, siamo venuti per un'altra cosa, per lasciare un'impronta. È molto triste passare nella vita senza lasciare un'impronta.
In August, he traveled to Assisi to show them another side of mercy. He heard many priests' confessions and reminded the faithful that just 800 years earlier, St. Francis had asked the Pope to grant an indulgence to anyone who received the sacrament of reconciliation in this church on August 2nd.
Il mondo ha bisogno di perdono. Troppe persone vivono rinchiuse nel rancore e covano odio perché incapaci di perdono, rovinando la vita propria e altrui, piuttosto che trovare la gioia della serenità e della pace.
In Rome, he invited 21 Syrian refugees to his residence to have lunch.
Il dramma della guerra.
Another day, he visited a house belonging to the Pope John XXIII community. It hosts 20 women who were freed from the slavery of prostitution. They spent more than an hour sharing their dramatic experiences with the Pope.
A tutti voi io vi chiedo perdono. Per tutti i cristiani, i cattolici, chi ne hanno abusato, e anche il perdono da parte mia di non aver pregato tanto per voi e per questa schiavitù.
September's act of charity was this moving visit to a children's hospital. The Pope approached the babies' cribs, gave each of them a medal, and greeted their parents.
Sono Giancarlo, è nato di 7 mesi. È nato un po' prematuro, però basta. Ci siamo quasi qualche giorno e si torna a casa.
The final big encounters and messages of the Jubilee were clear. On the Jubilee for prisoners, he called for better living conditions in prisons. On his final Mercy Friday, the Pope visited a group of men who had left the priesthood. In the Vatican, he met with thousands of homeless people.
Les pido perdón todas las veces que los cristianos, delante de una persona pobre o de una situación pobre, miramos para otro lado. Perdón.
In keeping with tradition, the Jubilee concluded with a solemn closing of the Holy Door. Of course, the Pope reminded the faithful that God's doors of mercy are always open. This door will be opened for the next Great Jubilee in the year 2025.